Hi, everyone. How's it going? This is Eden Mabon of LightCycleAstrology.com. Today, we are taking a look at the astrology for the week ahead for June 19th through June the 25th of 2023. So this is Mantic Monday episode number 2 that we're doing. My theme of this week for the overall week is going to be the birth of love and legacy. So we'll get into that in a moment. Before we do, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit notifications so you don't miss any videos. Leave me some comments in the comment section on any reflections you're having on the astrology you're noticing out there. And you can always find me at lightcycleastrology.com if you ever want to inquire about a reading from me. Okay, well, let's go ahead and we'll pull up the real-time clock now, and we'll take a look at the transits in this week ahead before we jump into the meaning of the transits. So we're beginning on June the 19th, this Monday here, and we're just past the new moon. We had a new moon yesterday in Gemini. At the late degrees of Gemini, the moon passed the sun and has now entered its temple of Cancer here by Monday. If we roll the clock forward, the first aspect of the week that we get to is Mars applying to square Uranus. This is beginning on Tuesday. We are going to notice this energy between Mars and Uranus by square for about 2 weeks. But we're getting the first leg of this. We're essentially getting the buildup towards the perfection of this aspect all through this week. And the perfection happens next Monday. Next week, we'll get the wind down of the energy. Now, you can notice manifested energies or qualities of a transit on both sides of the equation. You can get things happening as the energy is building, of course, and you can also notice things as the energy is winding down or separating out. So that is the first major transit of the week that we're going to take a look at today. Now, the next thing is just in general for the week, we still have the conjunction between Venus and Mars, but until they get to their closest proximity to one another, which actually happens between July 1st and July the 3rd, they get to be about 3 degrees and 28 minutes apart. And then what happens is Venus stations to turn retrograde. So normally Venus being faster than Mars, she's going to catch up to Mars and essentially overtake Mars at some point, and that is when the conjunction will perfect. But we don't get a perfection between these two planets this time because Venus is so near her retrograde cycle. So she gets very, very close within that 3-degree range, almost about 28 minutes before being within that 3-degree range of a conjunction, but then she stations to turn retrograde. So the closest we're going to see this conjunction this time around is just going to be between July 1st and July 3rd. But of course, until that time, we get a buildup of this energy as well. So interesting, this week, we get a lot of buildup energy towards the 4th of July. We get that firework combustible kind of energy between Mars and Uranus happening. And then you get that really intense and passionate energy between Venus and Mars happening as we're leading into the holiday weekend of the 4th of July, if you're in America. Now, the next thing that is really important that is happening this week, of course, is the sun's crossover of the gateway of man, as it was called in the ancient world here. So this happens by July the 21st. The sun crosses over one of the quarter points of the year. So we're going to take a look at what that means as well here in a moment. So those 3 transits really are, there's some other ones coming through. There's a couple of sextiles that are in the process right now as well. But I think these are the major transits that if we go a few more days forward, we do begin to see a square forming between Mercury and Neptune on the last day of the week here on Sunday, the 25th. But I think that particular aspect is almost built into some of the other major transits that are happening. So that's a piece of it as well. But for the most part, we're talking about the square between Mars and Uranus, the intensification of Venus and Mars in a conjunction, and the sun crossing over that quarter point of the year known as the summer solstice point or the gateway of man. So these are our transits for the week. Now let's talk about the meaning of some of these transits. Again, the theme for the week is going to be the birth of love and legacy. Part of the way I came up with this theme is, of course, looking at this dynamic between Mars and Uranus. But Mars making a square to Uranus, we can't look at that just as a standalone aspect because Mars is having that conjunction with Venus. So when you have Mars and Venus in the temple of the sun, you get that leonine quality that often planets there want to be seen. Venus in the sun's temple wants to be seen as being beautiful or attractive, or wants to attract and sort of kind of have that center of attention, that center stage, almost celebrity like status. So I think this is an interesting dynamic because you get the need for independence. That square between Mars and Uranus often elicits some sort of need for freedom or independence or a breakaway. But I wonder if the reason that we want to get that independence or breakaway arises from another kind of need to be seen or to be viewed as attractive or to pursue things that we are attracted to. So you have to tie in that Venus component as well here. For those who are in solid relationships, both of these planets, Mars, Venus, and Uranus, they're all in what the ancients called the solid, or what we refer to now as the fixed signs. So if you're in a solid relationship and we see Venus and Mars coming together, representing that kind of relationship, this might be a time where the need to be independent as a couple arises, So this could be, you almost like think of like, what's that phrase, the power couple? You almost get that sense of like that lofty, kingly or queenly kind of power couple that is a theme that sort of arises right now. But of course, you could definitely get tensions that suddenly come to a head, and you almost get the theme of like the straw that broke the camel's back sometimes here. So if there is discord or tensions in a relationship or somewhere in our lives, this could be the time where when Mars engages Uranus by square, that need to break away releases those tensions, and it's sort of like, okay, that's it, I can't take anymore. And you want to stand on your own authority here with these planets in Leo, I think. So that's one component of the week. Now, this Venus and Mars conjunction, we could dive a little bit deeper into that as well. This began last week, and so we took a look at some themes regarding this Venus-Mars conjunction in Leo. But honestly, after I published the video, I actually, in my head, there were some really important things that sort of popped in there. And it was like, oh, I forgot to mention these really interesting things that you could think about. So I want to include that as well. But we are seeing these planets day by day move closer and closer to one another up until we get to the end of the month. We'll just take a look again at this Venus-Mars conjunction. And one thing that we could add to what we talked about last week is that Venus and Mars coming together often symbolizes a kind of soothing or healing of wounds. If Mars represents the knife cut or the wound, Venus can often be a planet that will soothe or heal the hurts or wounds. And I think one interesting phrase that I wish that I had talked about last week was the wounded pride. When we think about Leo, we often think about the lion, and we call that the pride. With Mars in Leo, there may be themes about wounds to pride or the wounded pride. So one way that we might see Venus influencing the moment or the theme right now is that she might bring some kind of soothing, calming, or healing, or some kind of restoration of some wounded pride. Another way that we could see this, though, is pleasure that comes with inflammation, injury, or conflict. This is another thing that I wish I had brought up last week, and it just slipped my mind that this was sort of another angle that you could look at a Venus-Mars conjunction. But, Venus is often representing ways in which we seek out pleasure, the places that we have pleasure in. It's the pleasurable parts of life that we try to enjoy. But when you get Venus coming together with Mars, Mars can indicate inflammation, injury, or conflict. So it makes me think of, just something simple like enjoying food, but the kind of food that you're having is causing like an upset stomach or an inflammation in the body or something like that. Or, you're playing with your kids and you're having fun and it's summer and you're outside, but then you get like kind of like a twisted ankle. Or it can just be something really, really simple like that. But we definitely sometimes see themes where when Venus and Mars come together, it's like the pleasure or the fun comes along with maybe a potential injury or accident or something like that, or a conflict. Really getting back to this connection that Mars is having with Uranus, we could, of course, see things like unconventionality, disruption, or excitement around the topics of sexuality or love that becomes illuminated. So I think that that is really the salient point here, is that, Uranus brings in that sort of wild card chaos energy, that out of the blue kind of sort of chaotic energy. Now, a lot of people, they talk about Uranus representing things like unconventionality or disruption or excitement. So those are prominent keywords that we always go to for Uranus. My personal take on the root of some of these words that we use for Uranus, if you take a look at the mythological origins of Uranus, Uranus was a god that came before all other gods, and essentially he mates with Gaia, the Mother Earth, to produce all of the gods after him. And it's said that Uranus was the sky god, but it was the sky god that held all of the undifferentiated pieces of the cosmos before order came. So as the gods were born, we see order is coming to the cosmos, but Uranus sort of represents a time or a holder of undifferentiated potential. It's just the formless, shapeless, disordered movement of things that are just floating around in the sky. So I always imagine just, kind of like a solar system before it's formed into planets or something, and there's all this dust and asteroids and comets and ice and just everything that is forming. But Uranus is sort of like that for me. It's like, imagine you've got things kind of rolling down the track and everything is stable. You know what's coming, you know what to expect. And then here comes Uranus, this god of just total undifferentiated potential of chaos, just entering the zone, And so it's like you could expect the unexpected, the wild card, the unconventionality, the basic disruption, but also the excitement that comes along with Uranus. And when you are having this contact between Venus and Mars in Leo, there may be definitely themes around that chaotic energy that brings unconventionality or disruption or excitement, connecting to the topics of sexuality or love. But we add in that Venus and Mars are in the sun's temple, and the sun is very bright. So whatever kind of freaky way that you like to get busy could be illuminated, or could become known or famous or visible or infamous. There's this way in which things in Leo become illuminated because the sun shines the light on everything. Like, I would not be surprised if we get a sex tape from some famous celebrity or something like that, right? So you could see infamy and celebrity drama, or important discussions around sexuality within society. This has already been, as Venus and Mars were moving closer and closer in the past couple of weeks, I've noticed that there has been a lot of conversations in the public space surrounding sexuality and children and the educational system and things like that. So we have already been entering a lot of discussions about, we're taking a look at central kinds of ways in which we view certain things within society. And Leo represents that, the sort of the central organizing purpose of society. So what is like our central notion of how we teach children, and how do we teach children about sexuality? Do we do it this way? Do we do it that way? Do we not say anything? These are topics that have already becoming really prominent within the public narrative as of late, in my opinion. So I think that may be because we're seeing this buildup between Venus and Mars in Leo. Also, the big thing that happens this week is the sun's entrance into Cancer. So obviously, this is the beginning of the season of summer, a season marked by a turnaround of light when darkness enters the light half of the year and increases over the next 3 months. Now, I actually want to do a demonstration of this in my Starry Night program. There we go. Okay, you guys should be able to see Starry Night Pro now. This is a little bit different than the real-time clock. I've done this a couple of times on the channel, and for me, this is always one of the funnest things to do. But at very important times of the year, it's really useful just to bring up the astronomy software to take a look at where are we deriving some of the astrological meaning from? Where do we get some of the meaning in astrology? Well, a lot of it comes from the astronomical occurrences that happen throughout the year. Specifically, the sun is very, very involved with this. So what I have now is I have this astronomy program up on the screen, and I have the location of the software set to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So this is East Coast time here, and it's more of a northern climb or latitude on the Earth. And you'll see here this green line. This represents the sun's path in a given day, right? You can sort of see here we have this E down here representing east, and then we have northeast, and we have southeast. So if you were standing directly east, on the grass here, I actually have the sky artificially dark so you can see the sun and the stars. But this is obviously during the daytime, but the sun would rise along this green line here in the morning time, right? And then what it does is, of course, the sun climbs and climbs throughout the day. And as it gets somewhere, near noonish time, you see this white line that is climbing straight up here. This is the zenith line. It's telling you how high in the sky objects are. So look at the way that the green line intersects this white line of latitude and then comes back down again. So this are right around noontime, right? The sun climbs to its highest elevation in the sky. And then eventually the sun, starts to descend and head towards the western horizon. Here is the west right over here. Look, there's actually a comet coming through. This is the equinox, March 20th of this year, 2023. So this was essentially the equinox here. Equinox, remember, means equal night. And you can see that these numbers are real faint, but you can see that we've got, the sun on the highest point in the day is right around 50 latitude in the sky before it begins to descend lower and lower in the sky and head towards the west. Now, so what I want to do, though, is watch as I roll the calendar forward day by day here. Basically, what we're doing is it would be like if we go outside at the same time every day and we take note of where the sun is at that moment. So it's going to be roughly, in the same part of the sky every day at the same time. But we're going to notice that the sun rises and then eventually it will fall. This green line will rise up. And that's what's happening is as we cross over the equinox here, we're moving into the light half of the year where the daytime is longer than the nighttime, right? So if I roll the clock forward, this is actually really cool. This is where the comet comes through. What comet is this? It's called SOHO, C/2023 F2. I'm curious about this because this is right around the time my daughter was born. But anyway, watch the sun now. It's going to climb higher and higher. So it's going to go from 50 latitude as days go on here, and it's going to head up towards 60. So watch the sun. It's climbing higher and higher day by day here. You see that? And now we're into April, and it's just rising and rising and rising. So now we're heading towards Taurus season pretty rapidly here. And I'll pull it down just a little bit. Okay, here's Taurus season, and it's still climbing, right? So we're in springtime, and we're climbing higher and higher. Look, we've gone above 60 now. We're about 65 in declination here, and we're just rising higher and higher. And this is why the days get longer and longer, is because the sun is higher and higher over our heads and makes the days longer and longer. It also takes longer for the sun to travel across this green band here. It has to rise higher and higher and then set overhead, and then it has a long way to come back down. Whereas earlier in the year, in the wintertime or in the springtime, you see that the band is much closer to the horizon. So it doesn't take as long for the sun to move through the day. But as we keep going here, we essentially get to a place where we're going to top out. And that's what I'm trying to demonstrate here. So now we're into Gemini season, and look at this. We're beginning to get close to when we top out here. We're above 70 now. And as we approach the summer solstice, where the sun stands still, that's what summer solstice means. We get to right around June the 20th here. Look, it's starting to level out. June 19, June 20, June 21. This is the summer solstice. So it gets to be about, looks like 74, 75-ish on this meridian line here. But if we keep going forward, now you'll notice that we're in Cancer season. Now this sun, the sun's arc is descending again. Look, it's coming back down closer towards the horizon. You see that? And so let's do it fast one more time. This is in reverse, but you can see the same phenomena. So if we go back, we'll just go back just a little bit here, maybe into May. Okay, we're going to go forward from May 25th now. Sun rises higher and higher every day. The day gets longer and longer. Now we get to June the 21st, the summer solstice. This is the longest day of the year because the sun is the highest. But then it begins to sink back down. The days get shorter and shorter from this point forward. So I wanted to demonstrate that because this is one of the main ways that we derive astrological symbolism for. What could we say about this symbolic rising and falling of the sun as it crosses over what in ancient times was called the gateway of man? The fact that the sun, or the symbol of metaphorical spirit and God, is rising away from the earth and out of darkness as we move through springtime. But then when we come to the summer solstice, this is a time where there's a turnaround, and the light, or the spirit, is now heading back towards the earth. It's descending into matter, and there is darkness increasing within the light half of the year. So all of these things are sort of synonymous, and they all sort of point us to this ancient philosophical notion that light represents the diamond, or the spirit, or the God. It's sort of the animating thing that moves our body. But it's also, in the ancient world, the diamond was almost like a spirit guide that would conjure up images within your soul. He would sort of, like the soul was sort of packed with a lifetime full of desires and images that it wanted to achieve or experience. And it's like this return to darkness is a time where whatever spirit is conjuring up within our soul, whatever desires are sort of blooming or blossoming out of the soul at this time, this movement back towards the earth or into darkness returning, it is sort of like a planting of the spiritual idea into some metaphorical terra firma, if you will. So some ideal image that inspires and drives our life forward, it's being seeded or planted. Remember that in ancient astrology, the birth chart of the world, the Thema Mundi, was a chart that had Cancer on the ascendant. So very, very interesting here. This is a time of year when each of us rebirths the world, you might say. We seed images we are inspired by at this moment into the soil of Earth. A big part of, I think, why we do this at this time is because we remember the most important things to us. Cancer is a symbol for the moon being the moon's domicile. And remember that the moon encircles the world. So the moon has this connection to the worldly realm or sphere. And because it's always circling the world, people like Adam Ellenboss have described it like saying that the mother always returns to the child. It always brings that nurturance or devotion of what it remembers because it's always returning. So we see the moon, going around the world constantly and eternally. It's just always cycling back. So this is a time of year where we remember what we are devoted to. We remember what's important to us. We remember what it is within the material realm that we keep coming back to. So could it be material security? This is a sign that deals definitely with what is it that we need in the world that makes us feel safe and secure. And there isn't anything wrong with that. Sometimes materiality is sort of like looked at as like a derogatory thing. But of course, we're all flesh and bone and blood. We need, we need things. We shouldn't feel guilty for needing material things. I think you just don't want to take that too far. That's not the only important thing in life, of course, but could this be a time where we just return or remember or recommit to things that we need for ourselves materially? And what does this look like for each of us? Is it home? Is it a property? Is it a job? Is it a career? Is it education? It could be any number of things that makes us feel secure. Is it the homely comforts of family and or childhood? These are all themes of the moon here in her temple of Cancer. So again, with the sun entering Cancer, the moon's temple with Venus and Mars going through a powerful conjunction in the sun's temple of Leo, and making contact back to Uranus in Venus's temple of Taurus, you really, for me at least, you get the sense that we're coming into a time of remembrance. We're coming into a time of recommitment or devotion, things that we're returning to that are really important to us. But these planets in Leo, I cannot ignore that there is a certain connection with legacy. So what is it that ultimately we're remembering that has a connection with legacy for us? So I would say that remembering or returning to how our names will live on past us. Is it through our children, through something we create in the world and leave behind for others after us? Is it the ideas we teach or pass on? Is it returning to a devotional practice related to health or a spiritual life? Or is it simply giving our eternal soul the experience of the way we love or are loved by others? Okay, guys, well, that's all I have for today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys got something good out of this. Please let me know in the comments if you liked this or if you notice any of these themes popping up or ways in which the energies are coming through for you. Also, don't forget you can go to lightcycleastrology.com if you ever want to get a reading from me. And we'll be back again next week with another Mantic Monday. Take care and have a good week. Bye.